Yes. So very good morning to dear students. Bache, we have done first part. Let's start with the second part. And I told you that it is a kind of the summary we read on that day also. In the second part, he is the giant itself. He saw a most wonderful sight through a little hole in the wall. The children had crept in and they were sitting in the branches of the trees. Now, when he just looked out of the window, Siddhima, casement is window with a, you can read here, window that opens on hinges like a door. I told you that you should always mark the words and the other difficult words also. So, that is casement. He saw a most wonderful sight. When he just watched out of the window, he saw that through a little hole in the wall, the children had crept in and they were sitting in the branches of the trees. He observed that the children were on the branches of the trees and they were enjoying, they were laughing. In every tree that he could see, there was a little child. In every tree that he could see, there was a little child, and the trees were so glad to have the children back again. I think we discussed on that day also that children were the life of the garden, isn't it? Our school children make school life. You are the life of the buildings. School is not a building. The garden was it was covered with winter and frost, and so many characters are introduced. Very good description is there. So the garden again, it was full of blossoms and flowers, and the trees were so glad to have the children back again. It seems that all these are characterized. They had covered themselves with blossoms and were waving their arms gently. We have seen that in this chapter, the author, he has characterized, he has thus personified all the natural phenomena. Above the children's head, the birds were flying about and twittering with delight. Delight is very happy. And the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. It was lovely scene. I told you on that day also that very good description of the garden is there more than one time. There is a great, very nice description. Only in one corner it was still winter. It was the farthest corner on the garden. The whole garden was full of flowers and all, but in one corner you can see in the picture also. But the giant saw that in one corner only a tree was full of frost, and snow was there. It was gray in color. It was a lovely scene. Only in one corner it was still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden. In the farthest corner, and in it was standing a little boy. He was a little boy. He was so small that he could not reach up to the branches of the tree. He was very small child, so he couldn't reach the branches of the tree. He was wandering all round it, crying bitterly. And when a child is helpless, what he was doing, he was just crying there bitterly. The poor tree was still covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was blowing and roaring about it. Climb up, little boy, said the tree, and it bent its branches down as low as it could. But the boy was too tired. But the child was very small. He couldn't reach the branches of the tree. And the giant's heart melted as he looked out. How selfish I have been. See, now this giant, he realizes that he had been very selfish. He said, now I know why the spring would not come here. Now he could understand that there was all spring in the world outside of his garden, but only his garden was full of frost. I will put that poor little boy on the top of the tree. And he was he was able to understand that why that child was crying. His heart was slowly now started melting. And then I will knock down the wall. He realized, he regret what he has done, and now he just decides. On the moment he decides, I will knock down the wall, and my garden shall be the children's playground forever and ever. It will be a beautiful garden for the, it will be available for the children to play. He was really very sorry for what he had done. So he crept downstairs and opened the front door quite softly and went out in the garden. You can imagine that the children might be frightened. So it might be that's why he just moved to the garden very quietly. And when the children saw him, they were so frightened. See what happened? He was aware that they will run away. And they all ran away. And the garden became winter again. Only the little boy did not run, for his eyes were so full of tears. You can mark this line. You might be asked, but I told you that you should go on marking side by side because you may get the tricky questions from the chapter and you should know each and every point. Now, it might be, and I think their question is also there, that why that little boy, when all the children ran away, why he didn't run? Because he didn't run because his eyes were full of tears and he didn't see the giant coming. And the giant stole up behind him and took him gently in his hands. Beta, please check yourself, all should be mute. And put him up into the tree. He put him up into the tree, and the tree broke at once into blossoms. And the birds came and sang on it. The little boy stretched out his two arms and flung them round the giant's neck and kissed him. See the innocence of the child. He was not frightened. Rather, he just put his arm, stretched out his arms, flung them round the giant's neck and kissed him. Means he showed his love for the giant. And the other children, when they saw that the giant was not bit any longer, came running. The children also, when they saw that the child, he did no harm to the child, that giant did not harm the, or just put any harm to the child, they also felt interested to enter the garden again or come close to the giant. And with them came the spring. And with their arrival in the garden, the spring also came. It is your garden now, little children, said the giant, and he took a great axe and knocked down the wall. Now what he did, he just knocked down the wall and declared the garden for the children. And when the people were going to market at 12 o'clock, they found the giant playing with the children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. Mark the line. That with the arrival of the earlier, there was no spring at all, no flowers at all, no birds or so. But now it has become the most beautiful garden because due to the arrival of the children. All day long they played, and in the evening they came to the giant to bid him goodbye. But where is your little companion? He said. The boy I put into the tree. The giant loved him the best because he had kissed him. Now the giant felt attached. See, he is feeling attached to that little boy. But he had not come. So he asked the children. He inquired from the children that where is that little boy? We don't know, answered the children. He has gone away. You must tell him to be sure and come tomorrow, said the giant. But the children said they didn't know where he lived. Means nobody knows that who that child was and where had he come from. And he had never seen him before. They were not familiar to that boy, and the giant felt very sad. But the giant felt very sad because that child who had kissed him, means there was a kind of concern, there was a kind of connection, or we can say attachment. It was an attachment to the child. Every afternoon when school was over, the children came and played with the giant. But the little boy whom the giant loved was never seen again. He never entered his garden. The giant was very kind to all the children, yet he longed for his little friend, longed his desire. He wanted his friend to see again and often spoke to him, how I would like to see him, he used to say. He just talked to himself and just wanted to know that how he could meet him again. Years went by. See, years went by, and Giant grew very old and feeble. Feeble means weak. He could not play about anymore. So he sat in a huge armchair and watched the children at their games and admired his garden. He just watched the children and felt pleased to see the children playing in his beautiful garden. I have many beautiful flowers, he said, but the children are the most beautiful flowers of all. See, he has realized that children are the flowers. Actually, children are the beautiful flowers of his beautiful garden. One winter morning, he looked out of his window as he was dressing. He didn't hate the winter now, for he knew that it was merely the spring asleep and that the flowers were resting. Means he was aware of the seasons. Suddenly he rubbed his eyes in wonder and looked and looked. It certainly was a marvelous sight. He just saw a beautiful sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree quite covered with lovely white blossoms. That tree, one only tree that was also full of white blossoms, its branches were golden and silver fruits hung down from there. Means it didn't seem to be an ordinary tree. Rather, the description of the tree is very strange. It seems very, I would like to read it again. Suddenly he rubbed his eyes and what he looked, it certainly was a marvelous sight. You should mark this sight. It is when what he observed, what change he observed in his garden in one of his trees. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree. This is a different tree, quite covered with lovely white blossoms. वहाँ पे सफेद रंग के flowers थे. Its branches were golden. Branches golden color की थी. Yes, it was somewhere shining, and silver fruit hung down from them. And underneath it stood the little boy he had loved. What was the beautiful sight for the giant? Particularly, that was that little boy he had loved was also there. Downstairs ran the giant in great joy. Downstairs the Downstairs ran the giant in great joy, and out into the garden he hastened across the grass, came near to the child, and when he came quite close, his face grew red with anger. But when he came close to the child, he was full of anger. Let's see why it was. And he said, who hath dared to wound thee? Beta thee means you. It is Shakespearean language. Thee means you. You can mark and write here. Who hath dared to wound thee? तुम्हें ऐसे जख्म किसने देने की हिम्मत की? Dared is use of model. But you can just write the meaning of the line that who dared to harm you or hurt you, means he just saw some kind of wound on the child. What were those? For on the palms of the child's hands were the prints of two nails. What he observed? There were prints of nails. Nails के निशान. Nails means जो कील होते हैं, जो हम वॉल में लगाते हैं ना, कुछ भी वॉल में लगाते हैं तो. And prints of two nails were on the little feet. बच्चे के palms और feet पे nails के निशान थे, prints थे. Who hath dared to wound thee? Cried the giant. Tell me that I may take my big sword and slay him. मुझे बताओ मैं उसे अपनी big sword के साथ I will kill him. Slay him means kill. Nay, answered the child, but these are the wounds of love. What did the child say? He says, no, these are the wounds of love. Who art thou? तुम कौन हो? Said the giant. And a strange awe fell on him, and he knelt before the little child. He knelt, he just bent before the child and asked him humbly, who you are, kindly tell me. And the child smiled on the giant and said to him, you let me play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise. But at these end of the chapter, these marks of nails, print of nails, they all symbolize that. In a hint, we can say that these were the marks. We can connect it with the Jesus Christ. If you remember the history, Jesus Christ, he was nailed, uh, and he was having the mark. If you are aware of Jesus Christ, and we also feel that it was Jesus Christ itself who came to bless him. And what did that child say? You allow me, uh, you let me once play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise. और paradise का owner कौन होता है? कौन मालिक होता है? That is God, Jesus itself. And when the children ran in that afternoon, they found the giant lying dead under the tree and all covered with the white blossoms. So, dear children, you can see, we can here correlate that the child itself was God itself, Son of God. Jesus Christ is called the Son of God, God itself, and that child was having the mark. These mark only make us understand that it was Jesus Christ. Hope you all must have enjoyed the story and read the chapter thoroughly again and then solve the comprehension checks in the book itself. So, thank you.